Hello and welcome to another free code session. My name is Jason Bach, and I wanted to wrap things up first with this BenchmockMockNet thing and talk about the results, because I finally was able to figure out what was going on through some help and show you the results there, talk a little bit about recording, and then we're going to move on to a new feature because of the things I've done in this testing suite, performance testing suite of all these mock frameworks. I'm going to start working on something within Rocks. Again, first thing is I'm recording still with Camtasia. I have the little thing over here on the right, so that's why I keep looking over there. The first recording I think went well. I just watched the raw video, and it's nice because the video and the audio are separate. It's definitely more file size that it eats up when you do it. So that is what it is. But you know, I think it's a smoother recording experience. I haven't actually edited a video yet. We'll see what that's like, but you know, we'll give this a try and see what happens and keep doing it this way. And if it works better, so much the better. So with these results for JustMock Lite, and we purposely called it JustMock Lite because there was a paid version that lets you mock statics and virtual members and all that stuff. The JustMock Lite is a free version, and that pretty much does what all the other frameworks do, which is interfaces, virtual members, stuff like that. Okay. So the thing that was really hard to get through, as I think I was showing in the last video, is that things wouldn't end, you know, or at least it would take an ungodly amount of time for something to finally finish. And as I dug in off screen and I actually opened up an issue on the Telerik site and just trying to figure out why is this happening, you know, because I started to do like very specific analysis on these things. And it seemed like if you kept doing certain things with JustMock, it would start to, you know, get slower and slower and slower. And I couldn't figure out why. So the result is, if I go to one of the tests, let's go to the benchmarks, and I ended up doing this on all of them, I think instruction is an easy one to show. You'll see here that I'm calling JustMock reset, that line of code. I do that in all the tests for JustMock, and then I do what I need to do. For some reason, this fixes things. I don't know why. And what's even funnier is if I tried to restructure all the tests so that I called reset right before you would return, that didn't always work. You had to put it in a try finally block. And I don't know why. It wasn't like anything was failing. It wasn't like an exception was happening. It was bizarre. But Steve, when we were going back and forth on this, he just threw an idea. Could you put reset at the beginning of every method and instead at the end? And I tried that, and that finally got everything to return in a reasonable amount of time. So that's good, because then it gets numbers back for how it works. So if I go back to the actual results, which are now updated, let's go here. One other thing he's included is a PR where I've changed all the rock stuff so that's all using create. There were a couple that were using make, and I felt like that was unfair because makes are really, really small and trivial. They don't do anything with expectations and setups and stuff like that. So I changed them all to be create because I felt like that was being, you know, that was more fair. And so now if you look at the results, you'll see that still overall, Rocks is the fastest, though on the construction one, it actually is slower than PCL mock. That's the one test where it's slower now. And that's what I'm going to do this video on, is to see if I can address that, because I got an idea. What's interesting is, and I don't mean to do this to like call people out or say that they suck or something's bad and all that stuff. I'm glad that Steve has done this, because I think this takes away a lot of ambiguity and personal preference and everything else, and says, these are the frameworks. What do they do? And yes, I'm getting distracted by a text over here if you're hearing it buzz. But you look at JustMock Lite, and it's one of the, you know, like in terms of all the frameworks, it's usually the slowest. And like for the return test, it actually gets into Gen 2 allocations, Whereas none of the other ones get there. Some get to Gen 1, but 3 stay in Gen 0. And it's the slowest out of all of them. Not always. There's one test where you actually pass in a parameter, and for some reason PCLMock does really badly with that compared to the others. I'm not sure why. But this is not to, again, call people out or say that something is horrible. It's just, these are the numbers. Now, again, there's a part of me that takes personal pride in this because, I just like all the other people that have maintained these open source projects, there's a lot of hard work that goes into these things. And, to anybody who creates this, not just this stuff, but anything out in the open, I still give a tip of the hat because you're making yourself vulnerable. You're making yourself open to the world. And even if you think it's a very, very small thing, it may help out somebody in the end. You never know. So, this has been, for me, for Rocks, it's probably the one open source project that I spend the most time on and the one that I have the most effort on because, I see these other frameworks like MOQ and Substitute and, Fake It Easy and JustMock Lite and PCLMock, and I look at their download numbers in NuGet and they're in the millions and mine is in the thousands. It's like orders of magnitude smaller, and it makes sense because it's later to the scene than these other ones. And I'm not just looking to reach feature parity with any of these other ones. Like I noticed with JustMock that I guess there's an ability to say, depending upon how you set your expectations, you can also say, I expect these to be called in this order. And I thought about that, for Rocks, could I do that? I'm like, yeah, probably. I know like the member identifiers. So I could say this one has been has a setup on and its member identifiers 3. So just start stuffing them in a list and then keep track of which ones are being called. And then during the verify, you would just say, was the call list in the order the exact same as the one I set as an expectation? So I could do that. But I'm like, why? I mean, if it's something that Rocks becomes more popular and people think that's a feature to add or any other kind of feature, I would definitely consider it. But, I do have some opinions about Rocks. One is that it should always be a strict mock. If you're using it to verify expectations on how something should be used, you should set it up with expectations and verify it. And some people may disagree with that, but if you don't care about something and how it's used, then just use rock make. And then, you get default values and nothing happens when you call things. And it will just, it's kind of an oblivious object to everything that's going on in the world. So you could use that, but I'm like, is that the point of what you're trying to do? In any event. So that's the way Rocks works. But I also sit there and look at this and go, it's the fastest out of all of them. And I'm there's a part of me that takes pride in that and goes, I'm glad that it's something that I feel is performant and it can still get better. There's a part of me that thinks I could still make this better if I wanted to. And in fact, that's one thing I'm going to try today is to see if I can make it better. But we'll get to that in very short order. So again, these are the latest results. There are a couple things that I've done in Rocks that I haven't pushed out of version 6.2. And at this point, .NET 6 is almost right around the corner, but I don't want to necessarily wait for that. I would like to get this last thing out there and push it out there and then, update these tests and hopefully they get better. So I think I talked about that. I talked about this, and now let's actually get into what I want to do here. So I'm going to pull this over this way. And so the idea is when you create a mock and then you say .instance, what's happening is from expectations, there's a method called create handlers. And that's what's calling to get an immutable version of that dictionary that has all of your expectations set up. I did that in part because I want to say when you do an instance, that's pretty much this thing has its own stuff when from that point on with expectations, that's kind of a dead object. It really, whatever you do there should mean nothing compared to what you've just done with making a mock. But that seems to do some, that's got to do some allocations to create the immutable dictionary and the immutable array or list or whatever I'm doing there. And I thought, well, do I really need to do that? Is it really that important? Because that dictionary is being passed to the mock and it's a private thing. And at that point, nobody else should be using it anyway. So yeah, do I really need to make that immutable? I mean, there's a part of me that likes immutable structures, that likes that notion of something being immutable. But I also know in the context of an instance, a mock instance, nobody should be changing that anyway. So what I'm thinking of is removing create handlers. There's a handlers method on there that already exposes the dictionary, and just use that. Or change it to create handlers, gives you back the handlers. And one of the things that it does is that when you ask for it, that's a signal, that's just a convention in Rocks, that means you're passing it to a mock instance. It will then set that internal field or whatever I'm using there to null, because then any other time to try to use it will run into a null reference exception, and that's explicit. So, now there's one also trick you could do, which I was looking at, which is you could you could try to get create handlers. You could try to get that array or that list back. I may do it from the property. And what I mean, let's just go into this so we can kind of see what I'm talking about. So let's go into expectations of T. And so you'll see here that and yeah, this might be a breaking change, but I've also put on this code here to kind of say you should never have been calling this from a developer standpoint anyway. This is all stuff that has to be exposed, but really is not for you to use. And so the handlers here is set up to be new by default, and then you just get it. Is it better to have this create handlers method that's going to be of this type that will that would return the current list here, and then just set this.handlers to null? Or does that even matter? Do I just get rid of create handlers, just say you can get handlers whenever you want, and if you so decide to get the handlers afterwards and do something to them, like change something to the values, that's on you. You should have never done that in the first place. And that's a little sketchy. I completely admit that's a little sketchy, because I don't like conventions being the way you do things in applications, But the point is that everything you set up, once you call instance, then you shouldn't really be doing anything after that. And that's why I'm still kind of leaning towards having this do that, where it sets what you've done internally to null, because then it would make it so that nothing else afterwards can work. Now, when you go through all the failures here for the verifies, if I remember right, this goes through the handlers. And so I don't necessarily want to change that either. I don't want to suddenly, break everything. If I go here to create handlers and I see what's all being called, I think it's all the generated code, actually. Yeah. From all the tests, which I don't care about, because that would change anyway. The generated code would just call .handlers, get a reference to it. So does that matter that I have a reference in my mock and still in expectations? And could somebody come back into the expectations and still set up verifications on it, which technically would that reference between the two would be that same dictionary? Would that necessarily matter? No, it's something I would never I'm just talking about it right now, but I wouldn't put it in documentation officially. It is something that you could do, but it would be something really sketchy in my mind. You should be just setting all the expectations beforehand. So I think what I'm getting to is I'm going to get rid of create handlers. You would just call handlers, and that's what the mock object would use. I've already done a quick check to see, does all the generated code work with a dictionary over an immutable dictionary? It seems like it does, so that shouldn't cause a lot of pain and consternation. And the other thing to notice here is that test that I did quickly is the way you construct normally compared to this thing where you just get the handlers as a dictionary. It seems like it's 4 times faster and allocates half the memory. So That's kind of a nice one. If I come back here, now again, this is not apples to apples because what this test does is not necessarily the same thing. But that would mean this cuts it down from, well, let's just do calc. Let's bring up calculate. 878 divided by, what was it, 4.13 or something like that. It would get it down to 212. Roughly, that's just pure guesstimate. We would need to run this and see what we actually get. But that would start getting it closer to the ballpark of what I think it should be doing anyway. You know, this doesn't really appeal to me. And there's no real goodness to making this an immutable collection other than, you know, should be. And that's not a diss, or that's not putting down immutable structures at all. They definitely have their place. In this case, though, I think it's reasonable to get away from them and still preserve the best semantics that you, or the good semantics that you want. And yeah, you could set expectations afterwards, but you really shouldn't be doing that either. Range, act, assert. That's what you should be doing. Okay. All that said, let's actually try to change this. So this is what, 151. Okay. So let's come into here and let's say new branch, 151, change handlers, handler collection usage. That's fine. 151. That number is infamous with me. 151 with Tabasco sauce. Long story short. One time in college, somebody, because I was celebrating a couple of things, and my friend, who ended up being the best man at my wedding, he decided to order for me a 151 with Tabasco sauce. I am going to try to bestow wisdom upon you, the listener, to never do that shot. You know, in fact, I would say, you know, yeah, I like having beer and wine and having a drink or two, but you know, quite honestly, the older I'm getting, the to go out and just have a bunch of drinks and get drunk is just becoming way less appealing. But definitely don't do that shot. It will wreck you. It definitely wrecked me that night. So just a point of warning. I'm just trying to give you wisdom. All right. So let's go back to expectations. Okay. And that's this one. And so what I want to do is when you're creating it, you're getting the handlers. So you set that. So what we want to do is get rid of create handlers, and we just want to use handlers here. Okay. So let's go to the builders, because yeah, the make we don't care about. By the way, there was also something I was thinking about is with the make is trying to leverage the dispatch proxy class that's already there, and to see if instead of, you know, like writing my own code here for all this make stuff, is to just use a dispatch proxy with a custom implementation of it that does nothing but returns default values for methods or properties, ignores all the values coming in unless they're ref things, and then I give them default values. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that, but I feel like that would be a lot less code to maintain than what I'm doing right now with make. Plus, it would get rid of the source generator part, which I don't really care about for makes. It would preserve the same semantics. You know, again, makes are just, they're oblivious. I don't want to use the word dummy. They're oblivious objects that don't care about how they're being called or what they do. So that might be something. In fact, I should make a note. Where's my stickies? Sticky notes. You know, change make to dispatch proxy. Do some investigation. Why there's a pen here that I get? I don't want the pen. I want the pencil. So change make to dispatch. And if you don't know what dispatch proxy is, look it up. It's basically a way to do interception on objects. And, you know, that might be exactly what I want for the make. Because those I don't care about performance at all. I just don't. They should just be opaque objects that you really shouldn't be using for mocking and expectations anyway. All right, getting off my soapbox. So I should be able to get rid of this. I should be able. So let's go into the create, and somewhere in here, I'm actually calling .createHandler. So let's, because I can't do references to this because it's in the generated code, but I want to see where I'm actually doing handlers. So let's look in current project and see. So there's a mock constructor builder. This is in the class. So I'd only need to change these to being handlers. Yeah, these are the only two places where it's happening. Nope, we can get rid of this one. This is what we want. And these are both in the mock constructor builder, which is fine. But then we need to find immutable dictionary in the current project. And that might be in a lot of places. But that's, boom, right there. I think that's exactly what, well, and then that's got to change too. This has got to change. This is name of, well, that, that whole thing's got to change. So, and then we need this. So let's get some notes down. Okay. Let's do some notes. First, change all mocking to use dictionary. Okay. And call the handlers property. Okay. So that means mock type builder needs a change. mock needs to change. And then I had, what was the other thing I was looking for? Hey, hey, create handlers wasn't it? The mock constructor builder. That's right. Mock constructor builder. Now we know that when we do all these changes, it's going to break all the integration tests because we have to shut down and start up again. So that's why I'm trying to be a little bit thorough with these changes, because I don't want to keep going down that road. And we're already 22 minutes and I do have a meeting to hop on at 10 o'clock. So I don't want to do this for too long. So let's see here. First of all, we want to make IMock to be a dictionary. And then what is the expectations? This is a dictionary. Yeah, we want this. That's what we want. Okay. This thing. Okay. And then we get rid of the immutable one up here. Okay. Okay, so that's the first one. That gets rid, that makes this one done. Done. We don't change this, we're just not going to call it anymore. So now we go into the constructor builder and we say handlers. And we don't do that as that, we just say this, and then we come into the mock type builder where we would come up and say name of a dictionary, which you don't know what that is, but you do now. And it should be a dictionary and list of handler information, right? Yes. Name of a list. There we go. Oh, yeah, you're barking. Oh, God. You can... You know what? Bite me. So, we don't care. Dictionary. Okay. I don't want to... List. You know, at some point in the future, this is going to bite me. I know it will. I'm sure it will. But I was doing that to try to say, oh, if these type names ever change, then we'll just make sure that we don't ever lose that. But I'm like, you know what? No. Whoops. Whoa, that would have been too bad. So now we're just going to say that's what it is. Okay. And was it anywhere else in here? This handlers. Oh, yeah. All this. Yeah, we just want it to be dictionary of that. Okay. So we're going to change this to say there. And we'll keep that. You know, I'll keep this. We'll do this and say name of handler information. We'll put that back up here too. Like that. But no, now it's got to be, yeah, that would have been bad. Needs to be that. Okay. So for types that we don't know, and I'm not consistent with this, I know it's probably in some other places that I've done this. So there, okay. Now, yes, so I've done that, and that. Those are all done. Nothing should change in the actual mocked code. From what I remember, the dictionary and the mutable dictionary should have the same interface such that when doing like try get member or try get value, you know, whatever it is, that should all work. Now, what might not work is when I run the tests that span values are getting off place or something like that. So that might be something that breaks. Okay. So let's just build this, see if that works. And it does. Let's now come into the tests and let's build that. And now let's just say run tests for just this project. We know the integration test might break. We don't want to mess with that right now. Okay. So let's see what's going on. Yeah, it's not running the integration test. It should just be doing the tests here. And as always, I'm skeptical that it will break. You know, that this is not going to succeed. But we shall see. There's only 191 in here, but it has the big one where it goes off and tries to do a whole bunch of mocking somewhere else. So just have to wait for this to finish. And of course I'm recording, so that makes this a little slower, but that's okay. I wish it would have updated the, oh, so 6 failed. See? But let's see what fails. Rock create generator tests. Generate when invocation. I bet. Yep, down here we're starting to get, see, so this is actually good though. This is actually good because this is, you know, if I look at the, let's just see real quick, source generator application, I bet all these are just off. Yeah, they're all just off. And these are the only 8. What's this? 6 failed. Oh, because there's 6 out of the 8 in this thing. 2 did pass. Okay, cool. So that's actually a little bit better. I do have to stop though recording because I need to do some other stuff, but I will come back to this at some point and work on fixing these tests and then get into the integration tests. So I think we're making good progress. So thank you all for watching. Leave comments and questions below. See you in the next episode.